China tested 3 stealth fighters in the last few days of 2024, 2 of which were Delta-wing fighter bombers, and the last one to appear was the H-20 long-range stealth heavy bomber that is benchmarked against the US B-21. In addition, Chinese technology companies continue to release new drones, robot dogs, and humanoid robots. And the People's Liberation Army has also successively announced new weapons and equipment, such as the application of robot dogs in the army. The Chinese government announced its latest weapons and equipment to the outside world by testing them in big cities such as Chengdu, Shenyang, and Xi'an during the day, which is completely different from the previous low-key approach. It can be seen that China's national strategy has changed significantly from low-key development and passive defense in the past to active counterattacks and head-on confrontation with the United States. China has been trying to ease relations with the United States during the terms of Trump and Biden, but the U.S. government has been escalating the confrontation and China is facing increasing pressure. However, after several years of confrontation, the United States has not only failed to defeat China in economy and technology, but due to industrial decline, it has been in a serious passive position in the technological war. Only a few fields such as high-end chips are ahead of China, so that many countries that originally stood firmly on the side of the United States have begun to swing. In fact, with the national strength of China and the United States, if it is one-on-one, the probability of the United States winning is almost zero. China's total economic output calculated by PPP has long surpassed that of the United States, and China's GDP is more valuable. Its industrial output value is the sum of the United States and its allies. China is ahead of the United States in terms of population size, number of engineers, infrastructure, industrial layout, etc. The only way for the United States to defeat China is through force. Therefore, China must disclose its true capabilities in the military field to deter the United States. For example, China has repeatedly tested hypersonic missile technology and anti-satellite technology and notified the United States to test-fire intercontinental ballistic missiles. The test-fire was completed under the full monitoring of the United States, hoping that the United States would understand that China is not bragging. If the United States ventures to start a war, it will definitely suffer a blow beyond its imagination. 2025 is an important year for the World Anti-Fascist War and the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese War of Resistance against Japanese aggression. On October 1st this year, China should hold a grand military parade to show China's military strength to the outside world again. The War of Resistance against Japanese aggression is of extraordinary significance to China. It is an important war for China to get rid of poverty and weakness and become a world power again. At that time, China, with military equipment that was a whole generation behind Japan, paid a far greater number of casualties than Japan and finally defeated Japan. This war greatly boosted the morale of the Chinese people, and the myth of the invincibility of the great powers has become a thing of the past. 5 years later, the People's Republic of China, which had been established for less than a year, sent troops into North Korea to fight against the United Nations forces composed of more than a dozen Western countries, mainly the United States, and the two sides ended in a draw. At that time, China received strong assistance from the Soviet Union in terms of equipment. The Chinese army experienced the baptism of modern warfare for the first time and realized the importance of military equipment. Then the Chinese army defeated the Indian army with a crushing victory in 1962 and also demonstrated its terrifying firepower strike capability in the war against Vietnam. However, if the equipment level of the Chinese army is compared with that of other countries, it has actually not been able to surpass the state during the Korean War. In the Sino-Vietnamese War, the Vietnamese army caused heavy casualties to the Chinese army by flexibly interweaving and coordinating the equipment of the United States and the Soviet Union. Although China punished Vietnam through a decade of border wars, military technology reform is urgent. In the 1990s, when the top Chinese military officials boarded the U.S. aircraft carrier, they were shocked by the American military technology and were speechless. China has formulated a long-term military industrial development plan. The first stage is to purchase a large amount of military equipment from Russia and various weapons left over from the Soviet era from Ukraine, and digest and imitate them. China introduced the Su-27 production line in the 1990s and started learning from assembly. By 2000, China had become proficient in manufacturing various Russian equipment and was more advanced in electronic systems. For example, the J-11 series developed based on the Su-27, but China still could not conquer core components such as aircraft engines and advanced radars. At the same time, China came into contact with some advanced Western weapons through various channels, especially Pakistan, Israel, and other countries provided relatively important help to China. Chinese military researchers believe that there is a clear gap between Russian weapons and American weapons. Since then, China has begun to shift the focus of imitation from Russian weapons to American weapons. J-10 is a relatively successful attempt. After 2010, China no longer needs to introduce any technology from Russia and military technology, and sporadic purchases are only for comparison and verification. For example, Su-35 fighter jets, S-400 air defense missiles, etc. China has improved the independently developed WS-15 and other engines by studying the Su-35 engine, and improved the independently developed HQ series air defense missiles by studying the S-300, S-400, etc. At the same time, due to the rapid development of China's industrial strength, China has mastered a large number of advanced materials and process technologies. China has begun to abandon the Russian weapons route and completely turn to the American weapons route. J-20 is a typical representative. In the early days, China's J-20 still used Russian engines, but later replaced them with the independently developed WS-15. China also independently developed the Beidou satellite navigation system, getting rid of its dependence on GPS. By 2020, the military and technological exchanges between China and Russia have become a stage where China exports more technology and imports less. For example, China provides Russia with high-performance electronic components, cost-effective diesel engines, drone components, etc. At the same time, China's weapons production capacity has entered an explosive stage, with the world's largest number of warships launched. At its peak, the total tonnage launched in 1 year was equivalent to the navy of a medium-sized country. China has 300 J-20S, more than F-22S. Domestic aircraft carriers, 075 landing ships, J-35 stealth fighters, Y-20 series large transport aircraft, tankers, early warning aircraft, H-20 stealth bombers, 095, 096 nuclear submarines, DF-41 intercontinental missiles, Julong-3 submarine-launched intercontinental missiles, hypersonic missiles, and other emerging equipment were quickly finalized and put into mass production. However, although China is the world's factory with amazing production capacity, after the weapons are delivered to the troops, they need to be trained and run in before they can exert their combat effectiveness. To truly form combat capabilities, they still need to go through exercises, actual confrontations, and even small-scale military conflicts. Today's Chinese army is like an 18-year-old boy with well-developed muscles and great potential, but he is still very immature and lacks combat experience. The United States is like a 35-year-old middle-aged man. Although his physical functions have declined, he is still at his peak. So the Chinese official keeps releasing news, in fact, to avoid war rather than start a war, because time is on China's side. The United States' huge military equipment, whether conventional weapons or nuclear weapons, is in urgent need of maintenance and updating. The declining industrial capacity of the United States is not only difficult to cope with, but will also generate sky-high bills far exceeding China's, which will overwhelm the U.S. finances. So China's strategy is simple: open up as many battlefields as possible to make the United States exhausted. China will announce more and more new weapons, forcing the United States to follow up with research and development and consume national strength together with China. Since China is the world's factory and has huge domestic demand, many products are not only beneficial to national defense, but also can improve people's livelihood, so the marginal cost is much smaller. For example, China's robot dogs have long been used in real life. Even vendors selling goods in scenic spots use them. However, the US military has to spend dozens of times the price to purchase competing products with worse performance from American manufacturers. China's drones are not only cheap and affordable, but also advanced in function. The US government wants to block DJI, which has attracted strong opposition from users in various fields because they can't find a good alternative. The drones developed by SF Express have been intercepted by the Chinese military because of their beneficial performance and production capacity. They are given priority to supply the military and have shown far more than expected results in joint exercises with the military. It can be said that relying on China's huge industrial capacity, the Chinese military can equip the same level of weapons at 1/10 or even less of the US military's price. Not to mention that China's military expenditure is also rising rapidly. China's so-called technological blowout in recent years and its military strength are by leaps and bounds. In fact, it is not a miracle. Like most large-scale projects in China, they were established more than a decade ago or even decades ago, and then persisted for a long time, and finally ushered in rich rewards recently. The same is true for China's aerospace technology. Starting from the simplest and most basic projects, it has led the world today and competed with the United States. At the end of the video, I want to at the Indians again. Bragging can never gain real strength. Please don't ask me what I think of ISRO's achievements. I have no desire to comment on this fake organization. Send astronauts into space first, and then come to my comment area to debate with me. In the field of military technology, I suggest that India first develop reliable automatic rifles and then develop aircraft carriers and fighter jets. Otherwise, it will continue to make all kinds of low-level jokes. If you continue to make idiotic remarks that the Tejas fighter jet beats the J-20, you will only be ridiculed by more netizens and ruin India's international image.